You all know the story of the disciples of Jesus walking through the grain fields and plucking the heads of the grains and being rebuked by the Pharisees for doing that during the Sabbath. But do you really know the reason why they were doing that? Well, I don't think the reason is what you think it is. Let's jump into Mark 2:23 to find out the real reason. So Mark 2:23, let's read. Kai egeneto auton en toi sabbasin paraporevostai, diaton sporima, kai hoimathetai autu erxanto hodon poiein tillantes tus stahuas. So the structure of the verse is kind of simple. It starts as usual with this conjunction kai, which we know means and then there is the principal verb egeneto that holds this whole clause from here up to the comma here, which is an infinitive um, sentence where the subject is actually in the accusative. So this is the subject, but instead of being the nominative, is in the accusative case because it's the infinitive, which is held by this principal verb here, egeneto. And the verb itself, which is right here, is in the infinitive form. Okay, that's why it's called an infinitive sentence. Then we have this prepositional phrase introduced by n, which gives you the when the action is taking place. And then you have this other prepositional phrase introduced by the preposition dia that tells you where the action is taking place. All right, so this is the first sentence. Then you have the second sentence, introduced again by this conjunction kai, where the subject is right here, hoi mathetai. So this is the subject of the second sentence. Now, the second sentence is not an infinitive, so it's a standard sentence where the subject is in the nominative case. Um, and then there is this genitive, which indicates possession, okay, possessive. All right, it's just related to the subject. And then the main verb of the second sentence is this erxanto. So this is verb, let's say number two. Well, this is, let's say, verb one, okay, that holds this verb two, the infinitive, and this we can call it verb three that holds this other verb here, poiein, which is in the infinitive form also. However, the two structures are not the same, but in somehow are parallel. There's like a main verb that holds an infinitive verb, and then you have the object, the direct object of the infinitive verb, and then there is this clause here, which is introduced by this tillantes, which is a present participle. Okay, participle, which is connected to the subject, of course. That has these two stahuas as direct object itself in the accusative case. All right, so now that we understand the grammar, we can start translating. All right, so we said kai means and. This is usual conjunction with which all the verses in Mark, pretty much all the verses in Mark start. And then you have the verb egeneto, which is in the aorist tense, which indicates an action that happened at a point in time in the past. The verb is ginomai, which means to happen, to occur. Okay, so it's in the impersonal form, so it means it happened, it occurred, and the whole thing explains what occurred, right? And so the subject of the action becomes in the accusative case, as we said, and the verb is put in the infinitive form, as we said. Now, auton is the personal pronoun, masculine singular in the accusative case. It means him. So is he talking about? Who's he talking about? Jesus, of course. So, and it happened that he, meaning Jesus, paraporevosai, it's an infinitive tense of the verb para porevomai, okay, where you have this preposition in front, para, which indicates generally motion around. So wandering around, it's a sort of circular motion around something, but it just indicates moving around here and there. And then the verb itself, the root verb, which is porewomai, which means to walk, or to go. So paraporewomai just means going around, walking around. He was wandering around. He was wandering around where? Well, this prepositional phrase introduced by dia tells us where. So dia means generally it has can have many meaning, but dia plus the genitive. You see here the genitive plural in omega nu generally indicates a passage through. So it's a passage through a place. Okay, through a place. And in fact, they were going around through ton sporimon, which is plural. So those are the grain fields, right? They were going around through the grain. They were passing through the grain fields. And then you have this other prepositional phrase, which tells us when the action happened. So you have this en, this preposition that generally is translated as in. It can mean, the place where somebody is, or the time where somebody is, at that point in time, right? In this particular case, it indicates the time. And once the dative, in this case, you see this omicron iota sigma ending, which is the dative plural ending, okay, which gives us en tois sabbazin. So sabbazin is the Sabbath, right? You probably understood from the sound of the verb of the word, and it's interesting because it's in the plural, so literally means in the Sabbaths. But this is just a typical Hebraism, right? They were using Sabbath in the plural, even if they were referring to just one single day. And we know that this happened on a Sabbath, so we can just translate, and it happened that he was going around through the grain fields on the Sabbath day, on a Sabbath day. Now, the second sentence explains us what Jesus' disciples were doing while they were going through the fields of grain. And here we have it, Kai and Hoi Mathetai are the disciples. Okay, so this is the disciples. We already talked about it. The root of the word mathetai means to learn. So the disciples were the students of Jesus. So this hoi is the right, is the definite article in the plural, masculine nominative case, because it's a subject of the sentence. So, and the disciples are to possession of him, so of his disciples, of him, and his disciples, erxanto. This is, again, it's an aorist tense as these agenitos, so they're in the same tense, from the verb archomai, which means to start. To start, it comes from the word arche, which means origin. Okay, so you understand why the verb archomai means to start, right? So they started doing what? They started, well, the verb is here in the infinitive, poiein. Now, the verb poieo is one of the most common verbs in Greek. It's the verb to do, okay? To do. So they were doing, or they were making, so to do or to make, okay? It's actually more make than do. It's something active that one does, sometimes with your hands, right? So it's also the verb of creating, right? And so they started making what? Making hodon. Now, hodon means way. It's the road, right? In your car, you have a odometer, which tells you, the how many miles you travel, right? It comes from this Greek verb, which means road or way. So you see that the reason why, what they were doing was they started making way, or making their way, we could say. They started making their way. How? Well, you have it here. Tilantes tus staques. This is the reason. This is what they were doing, and the reason why they were doing it was mainly to make way. Like you have to imagine that they were going through these grain fields with these plant of grains that were probably very tall and very thick, and they couldn't go through, right? So they were making their way through it while they were walking around. And how they were making their way through the grain fields? Well, by doing this, tillontes tus stahuas. Now, the verb tillo means to pluck out. Okay, to pluck out, and this is the present participle. You see, this ontes indicates nominative plural, which of course agrees with the subject, which is a nominative plural masculine. Okay, masculine. Okay, so the word plucking, what? And here you have the direct object. You see the article has this ending omicron epsilon sigma, which indicates a masculine plural accusative, so direct object word, which means plucking out the heads of the grain. So this word stachos means stachos is the head of the plant of the grain. So if we put everything together, we could translate as, and it happened that he was going around through the grain field on a Sabbath, and his disciple started making their way by plucking out the heads of grains. So, did you catch it? The main reason why they were plucking out the heads of the grains was not to eat them, as everybody generally thinks. Well, we will see that eventually we also start eating them. But the main reason was that they wanted to make their way through the grain field.